Hello. Hello, my lovely students. How you doing? Carlos here. I really hope that everything is okay with you. Today we are going to study in these anthropological instances the first essentialist instance, that is the Plato's one. Okay, so our today's title is Plato and the Conversation of the Soul. Remember that the essentialist instances, as we saw in the previous video, propose that we can understand our human nature through the concept of essence. Remember as well that the essence is what makes us what we are, or what make the object or the things or the entities what they are. For example, the blade is essential to the knife. The knife couldn't be a knife without the blade. So when an object or an entity or us lose the essence, the object, the entity or us stops being what we used to be. So the objects are what they are because of the essence. So let's try to ask this question to Plato. What is our human essence, or in what does our humanity consist of? So what Plato would say about this? Therefore, our today's keywords are going to be essence, obviously, uh, dualism. That I'm going to explain this in a bit in a moment, but dualism between the soul and the body, the tripartite nature of the soul that can be divided in the rational part, the spirited part, and the appetitive part, and finally a distinction between episteme and doxa. Now, at this moment, my lovely students, it's quite important that you remember the distinction, the Platonic distinction between the world of ideas and the world of shadows. Remember that in the world of ideas, we have these perfect, innate, universal, objective models that are called the ideas, which actually give origin to the several copies, appearances, representations of the world of the shadows. So remember one example that we actually saw in our class, in our previous classes. For example, one thing is the idea of dog, okay? And for example, Donder, my lovely Donder, I don't remember everyone's dog's names, but I don't know. Imagine that, I don't know, as I say, I don't remember your dog's name, but imagine that Canelo, Pamphilo, Pancracio are dogs. So Canelo, Pamphilo, and Pancracio and Donder are copies, are representations, are shadows of the perfect idea of dog. And again, without that idea, we wouldn't have any knowledge of the several copies or representations or appearances of the shadows. Remember, since these perfect ideas are innate, these ideas are already in our mind since we were born, and when we know something, we are actually remember it since we already got, as I am saying, the previous idea or the innate idea. In this sense, I already had previously the innate idea of a cup of coffee, and when I see this cup of coffee, I can remember in this sense the perfect idea of a of a cup of coffee. I can recognize that this one is a cup of coffee because I had previously the idea of that or that perfect idea. In this sense, remember this famous Plato phrase, to know is to remember. This distinction between the world of ideas and the world of shadows is going to be really important for our today's purposes. As you can see, the world of ideas, world of shadows, we already have a kind of dualism between these two different worlds, okay? Uh, and we are going to use this context in order to explain Plato's notion of the human being. Now, Plato didn't have a well-structured or elaborated theory for anthropology. He concerned about the topic, but he didn't develop it systematically. Let's try to visualize the schema for the world of ideas and the world of shadows. If I ask you, my lovely students, in which world would you put the human being, what would you say? The human being is more related to the world of ideas, or it is more related to the world of shadows? Well, uh, in this sense, the human being is going to be in the middle of the two worlds. The human being is going to be like in a struggle between the world of ideas and the world of shadows. That struggle is actually represented by Plato with an allegory as well. Remember the cave allegory we studied the previous semester in order to explain the world of ideas and the world of shadows. Plato used what is called the chariot allegory that you can see here in order to explain his theory about our human soul and about our human condition. According to Plato, our human condition is represented with this chariot allegory, with these images. We have three basic elements: two horses and a charioteer. Okay, the charioteer is the man that is kind of struggling with the horses and trying to control them. Now each one of these elements or components represent a part of our soul, a part of our human condition. As I already told you, the human condition or the human being is in the middle of the world of the shadows and the world of the ideas. In this sense, we have a dualism, or we can be understood under a dualism schema as well. We have a soul and we have a body. And in this sense, the soul is going to be more related to the world of ideas, and our body is going to be kind of related more with the world of shadows. Now, that is a really uh, canonic interpretation of Plato. I think that there are so many ways to interpret this kind of stuff, but let's stick with this for this moment. That is one of the main reasons that we have a soul and that we have a body, that or Christianity is going to fit and is going to merge really well with Greece, in the further centuries. Really, in order to finish this idea, um, our soul is going to be immortal, it's going to be eternal, since the ideas are perfect models, are eternal. Remember that part, or that important characteristic of the ideas. Uh, our soul, that is the one that apprehends or comprehends the ideas, must be immortal as well. And for the contrary, our body, since is more related with the world of the shadows, and remember, in the world of the shadows, everything changes. Our body changes, and in that sense, our body is perishable. Our body can die. But let's go back to the chariot allegory. According to Plato, we have three parts of our soul that is going to be called the tripartite nature of soul. This tripartite nature of soul contains the following concepts: the rational part, the spirited part, and the appetitive part. The rational part represents the charioteer. The spirited part represents one of the horses, that in this case is going to be the white horse, and which face is pointing up. And finally, the appetitive part is going to represent the black horse, that whose face is pointing down. We can understand this tripartite nature of soul actually in our bodies as well. The rational part is like in our heads. The spirited part is going to be like in our chest. The will begins in our chest, in this metaphorical way of speaking. And finally, the appetitive part is going to be in our midriff, in our like when you, for example, got really angry with someone else. I don't know if you have ever felt like you have an stomachache, that you have a really pain in your midriff. So this can be understood also in our corporal or way of being. And as you may imagine already, each one of these parts or elements or components represent a way of being of our soul, a way of being of our human essence. According to Plato, we have a part that, let's begin with the appetitive part. We have a part in which we sometimes we cannot control in the total way. We have desire. When you see a chilaquiles with a quesito gratinado, I mean, you are hungry. You cannot decide not to have hungry. This appetitive part is our uh, most basic and corporal part of us. But for example, maybe my example is really stupid. I know, I'm really sorry, but you see the chilaquilitos with the queso gratinado, melting. Oh, my lovely, lovely chilaquilitos. But I don't know, maybe you are on a diet, I don't know, and you cannot eat chilaquiles. So in the spirited or courageous part, the spirited can be understood as courageous part. Uh, uh, the spirited part can decide or not to follow those desires. Maybe you want so badly the chilaquilitos, but due to the spirited part, you are struggling not to eat those chilaquilitos. This struggling between the desire of the chilaquilitos and the will of not having the chilaquilitos is like a control or trying to be held by the charioteer. The charioteer is this rational part that tries to control this struggling between the spirited part and the appetitive part, between the two horses. For the record, what a tragedy if one is not able to have chilaquilitos. Now, the development of our human essence depends actually in the rational part, in how we consider our desires, on how we consider our will, and on that depends our way of acting in our lives. Um, we are not only the spirited part, or we are not only the appetitive part or the rational part, we are the three of them. These three parts compose our human essence. And now, this is really important. According to Plato, the part of our soul that is immortal is the rational part. The rational part is immortal, and the spirited part and the appetitive part are perishable. For example, why perishable? Because they can end, they can change. For example, maybe you want today chilaquilitos, but tomorrow you want to eat vegetables, and maybe you don't have the same will any single day. Will and desires change, and according to Plato, we need to exercise the rational part in order to decide what is better for us. This distinction of the soul lead us to another capital point in Plato's philosophy, that is this struggle or this distinction or this kind of fight between the episteme and the doxa, and that can be represented as well with this shared allegory and with these elements that we already saw. Now, episteme can be understood as truth, the true essence of things, the true knowledge of things, okay? And therefore, if the episteme is the true knowledge or the true essence of things, must be placed, as you can imagine, in the world of ideas, okay? For the other part, the doxa can be understood as the opinion, and opinions can change, can be different. I have an opinion of something, and another person has another opinion of, for example, love. For me, love is something, and for you, love is another thing. I have my opinion, and the other person had his opinion. And therefore, if our opinions are multiple, they can change, etc., the doxa must be placed in the world of the shadows. But for example, if I, in this kind of way of explaining, possess the episteme of love, the episteme, if that is the true knowledge of love, in that sense, of the real love, in that sense, it's the same idea for me and for the other person, because remember that the ideas are perfect, innate, and objective. And this process of trying to go from the doxa to the episteme, trying to not fall into the opinions, into the doxas, and this struggle, this process, as I already said, is known as the dialectics, and that is Plato's, in this way of saying, method. In other words, the dialectics, according to Plato, is this process of trying to find the true essence of things, is the pursuit of the truth, is trying to discard our opinions, our doxas, in order to find the truth, the true essence of things. When we question ourselves, what the hell is love? We want to know what is the true love, the true idea of love. And in other words, and I really hope that this point may be the most important one of of today's exposition, and I hope that is the one that you can relate more with yourself and with your lives. But human condition relies in this struggle between the episteme and the doxa, in the struggle of trying to find the truth. And when we try to find the truth, and this is really, really Platonic and really, really, in my opinion, beautiful, let's think about this. How can we know that, in this sense, true question begins within ourselves? How can we know that we are in the pursuit of the truth? Let's imagine that. Suddenly, I don't know. Let's imagine that you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Maybe some of you, or I imagine that you have a partner, a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I don't know. But imagine that that special person, the person that you love with all your heart and with all your forces, with all yourself. Imagine that that person suddenly goes away. I don't know. You break up, and you cannot understand fully the conditions or the consequences or the reasons of that broken heart. Now, I don't know if you have ever had this kind of experiences. I think that maybe you had. When you can't explain what the hell what is going on. In this case, in the problem of love, in these circumstance under these circumstances, the question of what the hell is love emerges, begins. Uh, People who know how to love, and that are really, really certain and sure how to love to someone else, they don't have the necessity to ask themselves what the hell is love, because they are loving. And I'm not criticizing those kind of people if they are really in a comfort way of living with their notion of love. That is cool. I mean, uh, but people philosophize, people start to think about what the hell is love, when in this example, love is already gone. Paradoxically, my lovely students, the uncertainty, the rupture in our souls lies the philosophical question. People who don't know what the hell is love or how to love maybe are the people that are going to ask what love is. People who don't know what friendship is, maybe is the people that is going to ask what the hell is friendship. And as I told you, maybe some people know the shit, and know how to live, and that it's cool. And those people don't need the philosophical question, don't need the dialectic, the pursuit of the truth, to the episteme, in order to discard the several doctrines and opinions. But I think that one quote by Plato is quite important in this sense. I don't like to quote thinkers, as you know, but I think that this is kind of, it has some relevance. Plato used to say, and that is a beautiful quote. Plato used to say that gods don't need to philosophize. Mankind, human beings, are the ones who need to philosophize. Therefore, and finally, Plato is going to define thought, yes, as the conversation that our soul, we were talking about the human soul during this whole video. Plato says that the thought is the conversation which the soul holds with herself in considering of anything. In other words, when, for example, you have this rupture with your partner, with your ex-boyfriend or your ex-girlfriend. I don't know if you have ever had this experience that you start to talk with yourself, oh, what the hell happened, what were the reasons of our separation, uh, how am I feeling today, how can I surpass and overcome this situation, and so on and so on. You start to talk with yourself. According to Plato, to think is to hold a conversation with your own soul. And it's not only like a monologue with you. In a deep, deep, deep way, to think is this, in other words, is the living of the human condition. To think, after all, is to live the human condition in this perpetual struggle and this perpetual pursuit of the true essence of things. In this conversation, we are trying to find the episteme of what is love, the episteme of the idea of love, the true knowledge of love. It's like going back to ourselves and trying to find the question, trying to find the idea. As you can see, thought in this sense is not only a rational uh, part that is kind of related with the rational part that we already explained, but even the rational part is not only like a cold part of our reasoning. It's not a reasoning that only makes calculus and mathematical operations and so on and so on. To think in a Platonic way is to trying to understand our feelings, in a our will, and in a word, our being, ourselves. It goes beyond a mere rational calculus or mathematical operations, the rational part. So thought is the part that, or is the way that we can have a conversation with ourselves in order to try to go to the episteme, to the true essence of things. Now, in order to close this video, and this is one of my instances with Plato, because people used to often say that, oh, Plato says this, that, or the world of ideas and so on, and that is cool, blah, blah, blah. But remember that in the previous classes, in the previous semester, one problem that we had is that what the hell is love, okay, we understand that there is an idea, perfect model of love, but it seems that nobody can know what, or apprehend or understand completely that perfect idea. Actually, it's part of our human condition in not to understand it fully. In that sense, and in my opinion, and trying to defend Plato in this sense, Plato never gives a true, a final definition, for example, of love, or a final definition of, for example, friendship, and so on and so on. Actually, it seems the dialectics process never has an ending. So in this sense, the human condition relies in the perpetual, and that is the reason that this struggle is perpetual, the perpetual struggle of trying to find love. Maybe we are not going to know what the hell love is completely as an idea, this Platonic idea or this perfect idea, but in this process of the dialectics, of the conversation with our souls, maybe in this process we are going to find new ways of living and conceiving love. And I think that that is a quite interesting way to understand Plato's philosophy about the problem of the human being. But well, I think that everything, well, is all of for today. I hope that everything is okay with you, and if you have any doubt about this video, we can talk about your doubt during the class, okay? Take care, my lovely students.